So my talk today is about how usually we do things differently when we're doing our own projects versus the way businesses like to do them. And I'm going to argue that there are some very good reasons why we should sort of try to imitate businesses when we can. And I don't mean just like the big evil businesses you think about. I know it's really cool to be, Indian hipster and, oh, let's hate on the gigantic publishers. But, everyday smaller businesses have real issues to worry about, and they use certain techniques to deal with those issues that I think maybe in our own personal projects we don't think about too much, but we can still get a lot out of those techniques. So first I'm going to argue why it's a good idea to take a more business-oriented approach when we think about doing projects, and then kind of what that entails. So first of all, a lot of us are interested in the industry, so this is something that if you've already thought about it and kind of wrapped your head around it and grokked the idea of these business decisions not existing in just a vacuum of game development, but it has to be a business and make money and connect to the real world, that could really come in handy when you actually go out and get a job if you've really given this some thought already. And we have limited resources, just like businesses do. Time, especially since we're students, but also just like your attention, it's very easy to get burned out on a project. You kind of lose the passion for it. And we want to be able to use our limited resources in the best way possible. And that's pretty much by definition what businesses do. Businesses all have some kind of sort of finite amount of resources, and they want to use those as efficiently as possible to achieve the maximum success. So we should probably look to them for examples and see what we can apply from them. And you will deal with managers when you get a job. There are managers, there are accountants, there are marketers, there are salespeople. These are all critical aspects to the game industry. And if, we have there's a lot of articles and stuff on the internet about how to get artists and programmers to talk to each other and communicate and understand each other's priorities, but there's not a lot of talk about development and management, or development and the economic side of actually getting game out the door and selling it. And by understanding a business perspective a little bit more clearly going in, you will be one of those people who can talk to management better, hopefully, or understand why marketers want to ruin your game and release it before it's done, and things like that. It really helps to understand where the other person is coming from. So it's good to think about these sort of things. So what do businesses have to work with? Remember, they manage their resources to try and get something. So they have money. They have a lot of money. The bigger the business, the more money they have. And so you might argue there are certain problems that can't be solved with money, but most of those can be solved by waiting, which means kind of keep paying everybody and wait for the next year to roll around, which is basically money. Time is money. So most of the problems that can't be directly solved with money can be indirectly solved with money by waiting. So money. They have lots of money. We don't have any money. But you do have personal time, you do have passion. These are your resources. You have to manage these. And I'm sure as students you've all learned tricks for getting your homework done or studying enough. There's a motivation issue. How do you motivate yourself? And we all have personal tricks of how we do that. And that's an example of you in your own life managing passion and attention as a resource. And you plan out ahead. If you have homework due, when am I going to do this homework? How much do I want to have done on a certain day? You are managing your time. You are budgeting, and this could be really useful if you're developing a game as well, or a mod or something like that. Businesses, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but businesses try to measure their success so they understand when they're doing things right and when they're doing things wrong. And this is really kind of the focus of why you would do this. It's so you can kind of sort of feel out when one project has succeeded pretty well and one project maybe you didn't do as well as you would have hoped, you need some kind of metric, some kind of way you can get a better feeling than just kind of playing it by yourself and seeing what you think about it. Businesses measure mostly in money. There's a lot of other things you can measure in it. If you take a long view, like how much attention has our company gotten, maybe that will make marketing the next product really easy. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, but the idea is they will measure how much money they're taking in, and that's their goal. They want to have more money. So if we can somehow make our goal a little bit analogous to this, we can see where that analogy applies, and we can try and figure out what techniques from businesses we should bring in. This is, again, by no means an exhaustive list. We want to feel good about our project. We made something cool. We like it. People talk about it. That's a great sign that you made something good. And how many people are actually downloading and playing your product? I'm going to use product a lot because we're using a business perspective here. So, you could have other goals, of course. Maybe it's purely educational. Maybe you just want to see if you can make something like that. And then maybe taking a business approach doesn't apply so much. The idea here is businesses sell things to people. So if it's mostly a personal thing where you want to make it for yourself, you want to learn something, you want to explore something, maybe it won't apply so much. If your market is very limited, like you're making a fun, cute thing for one get-together, one night with one group of 30 people as like an in-joke, maybe it also doesn't really make sense to treat it like a product that you're going to sell to people. But in general, if it's something you want to make, you want to put it on the internet, get it out there, and you want people to have fun with it, then this sort of makes sense. And so it didn't take me very long to come up with this idea of a goal. Create maximum aggregate joy and or fulfillment in human brains. I think that's a pretty good one. It's worded weirdly. It sounds a little psychotic when you say human brains, but the idea is like we develop video games because we want people to play them and have fun. That's why we're putting it out there. We want people to enjoy it. So the idea is the more people enjoy it and the more each person enjoys it on average, the better we've done. And I think this is a really good goal. It's also a very good goal if you want to get into the industry. If you can make games that are good, then it will probably be better for you and for the rest of the world than if you are making games that are not as good. So hopefully by now I've made the argument that there might be something to this business perspective idea. So let's think about how businesses deal with projects. So the first thing you should do when you get an idea is to not do it. Because that's not what businesses do. Game development projects are very expensive. They're very high risk. You might have a project and that's the only project for your company, and it will take you 4 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years, maybe longer. You have to know it's going to work, and you have to know it's going to sell. They do everything they can to take the risk down, and the bigger the company, the less they appreciate risk. So beyond a certain point, you get to these mega publishers who hate risk so much, they want like very consistent profits every single fiscal quarter, and they stifle all innovation in everything they're releasing because they really want consistent profits. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just in terms of low-hanging fruit. What are a few things you can do that are not very expensive that will really reduce the risk that you take on? You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to start it up and realize it wasn't such a good idea, or it wasn't really feasible in the way that you had in mind. You need to do a little homework beforehand. This is called pre-production. And it's very, very important for any big creative endeavor. It's big in the film industry. It's big in, even writers do it. They research before they start a novel, for example. So it's good to take a step back, and rather than just think about your project a little while and then get started, there's a few things that you can do to really say, all right, I think this might be a good idea. Let me go get some information to test that assumption. So step one is your feasibility study. You have to know what you're making it with and can you really do it with that technology. This can't be taken for granted. You really have to do some homework and decide, what technologies do I know? What could I know? What can I afford, or what do I already own? And is my idea appropriate for this? You might find that you have kind of your favorite idea and you have two other ideas that are sort of okay, but your favorite idea is just not going to work with any tools you have available, the kind of resources, the amount of time you have to invest, and you might move on to idea 2 or 3. This is a really great time to realize that you should be working on idea 2 or 3. And figure out everything that you need to learn even before you start learning it. Figure out everything start to finish you will ever need to know, and then you can say, okay, now I've got this much stuff to learn. Can I learn all that stuff, be reasonably competent at it, and then make the project or learn it as I go? You have to answer these questions beforehand. Tech support is really important. You will get stuck on your project. For a programmer type of person, this means you are stuck on the engine, you can't get something to compile, you have a bug, it doesn't make sense. For an artist, it might be you're just having a creative block and the style is not fitting, it's not working, and you need to get input from people who really understand art, not just a random set of people where you can say, how does this look, what do you think, but people who have some art education and can suggest things based on their huge body of knowledge. So it's really, really important to figure out where you're going to go to get that information. And then once you know everything that you need to learn, you need to go and learn it. And this is where your proof of concept comes in. And this is not a full prototype in that sense. It doesn't even need to be remotely playable. It might not even use user input. It's just the idea of once you realize you need to learn something new that you've never done before, you need to actually prove once and for all, yes, I can do this. So it can just be a bunch of random pieces lying around that don't fit together in any way, as long as you say, yeah, that piece can be done, and I can do it. And then later, this can all come into a prototype. But this is just the feasibility study. Can we do this? Step 2 is budget. You guys are probably familiar with this. This just comes easier with practice. It's just, do I have the time? Am I interested in it? How long before it's sort of playable? The last bullet point, when is it appropriate to bring other people in? The answer is as late as possible. If there's anything you can do by yourself anymore, don't talk to anyone about your project. You want to ask people exactly once to come in on your project, and you want your project to look as awesome and finished as possible before you ask them. And so that's just kind of an aside. When is it appropriate? Usually right at the end, when you can't do any more without them. And the important thing is you have to do the feasibility study before you ask this question, because you may have noticed we just ran into a lot of roadblocks with the feasibility study, asking, can we do this? How much do we need to learn? You have to go out and figure out what you need to learn before you say, sure, I can learn everything I need to know in 2 weeks and really get into the project then. And then market research. You're not done. You're not done. We haven't started the project yet. This is all pre-production. You have to do market research. This is kind of the crown jewel of my talk. I love it. You have to say, is there a market for this product? Which means, are people going to buy it? Are they going to spend their time on it? Is this something people would actually be interested in downloading and playing? It might be cool to you, which means it's probably cool to at least 17 other people in the world on the internet. Might not be worth the time investment. Depending on how long it takes, you might say 300 people might have to be interested before you did it. So you should try and figure out, like, is this something people might actually be interested in? And you won't have professional tools available. You won't be able to take focus groups or anything like that. But try to feel it out. A great way is to ask your friends online, people you're acquainted with who you know play similar games. You kind of know their personalities, sort of, and over the internet, they've never met you in person. They're really great about honest opinions. They will tell you exactly what they think because they're your friend, but they're also not afraid of making you mad. So, float the idea around a little bit. See if everyone just goes, yeah, it's sort of interesting, I guess, or if you can get a couple people to go, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I totally would play that. So you can try and feel this out any way you can, really. Competitors. You should know about your competitors. Go look them up. Go figure out what else is out there that's doing what you want to do. You can learn a lot from them. That's really important. But if someone's already doing something you're doing, then people might not be very interested in what you're doing. So you have to figure out what you're going to do differently. If I told you, hey guys, I have a great idea for a Half-Life mod, all right? It'll be team versus team, competitive multiplayer. Like one team's the good guys, one team's the bad guys. There's no respawns. The guns are kind of realistic, and by killing people, you get money, and every round you spend the money to buy guns and body armor and stuff. And the first question you should ask me if you're being confrontational, the moment I describe this to you, is what makes it different from Counter-Strike? Because Counter-Strike's pretty affordable. Everybody interested in this sort of game probably owns Counter-Strike, especially if it's a Half-Life 2 mod. What am I offering differently? Because I have to either say I'm going to do a better job in Counter-Strike, which is not very likely, or I have to have some kind of hook. I have to say it's going to be different because of this. And this is what might make Counter-Strike players interested in downloading this free thing and spending a few hours with it because, oh, cool, here's a thing you can't do in Counter-Strike that works a little differently here. That's fun. So you have to figure out how you are sidestepping your superior competition, or in rare cases, you can say, well, I found a few examples, but it was by other college students like me, and they sucked, so I'll just do a better job. Sometimes you might be able to say that. And then once you figure out what your hook is, you have to ask yourself, do they actually want that hook? So maybe if you say, well, it's Counter-Strike, but it's kind of hats.
Yes.
Maybe Counter-Strike players don't like the frivolous hat idea in TF2. There might not really be a market for a cheap Counter-Strike clone. Doesn't really do anything in core Counter-Strike quite as well as Counter-Strike, but it's got hats. Maybe those players are not interested in that idea. So you have to say, is there a market for my hook among people who are already interested in competing products? And you really have to do this, for real. So, step 4. You're not done. Figure out how you're going to offer this online before you start. Before you start developing, figure out where is this going to be downloaded from? Where are people going to click the link? You have to sell your product. People have to play it. If nobody plays it, we're not creating aggregate, I forgot what it was. We're not doing something to do with brains. Okay, people have to be able to get your product, and sure, you could, at the last minute, throw together some idea where you put it on MediaFire and post a link in some form somewhere. I'll figure it out then. But this will reaffirm your market research. This will reaffirm your analysis of, this is my market. Because if you have an idea of what your market is, you should know where they hang out. You should know where they're getting their files from. Where do they download things from? If this is a mod for a game, where do people download mods for that game from? You should probably know this stuff if you're serious about actually distributing a mod for that game. And you have to market it. Usually there's a forum. There's one forum for mods for a game. But if it's a standalone product, you might do some hunting and figure out, there's about a dozen really good forums. They're all about equal popularity for free games of this genre. And all it takes to get a few dozen more downloads is to just say, hey, I have this game here, I made it, you guys might be interested, download it, tell me what you think. And you post a link, and that's sales. You're selling right there. So you're marketing your product. You should know beforehand where these forums are, and you should read them a little bit to kind of feel out the community, because then you know what they're looking for, and that will inform your design decisions as you develop the product. And how do you communicate with your users? Usually this is the same as your marketing platform, how you tell people about it, but it might be different. It's just something you should keep in mind. You need to get feedback from your users, communicate with them. And remember, we want to tell if our product was successful, so we want to know, are people talking about this product? Are they asking questions about it? And if no one plays, it's not fun. You have to do this. I should clarify this. It's not that it wasn't fun and therefore no one played it. I mean, if no one plays it, you have created zero fun. No fun has occurred in human brains. Okay? So, literally, if no one plays it, no fun. Okay? So, remember, in a business, you have to develop the video game, and then you have to sell it. You need both parts. It's not enough that you have a fun game that's really, really fun hypothetically. Your goal is to, as a successful developer, is to make people actually have fun in real life, and then they have to play your game or your mod or whatever in order to have fun with it. So you have to do this. I know it's boring and we don't like it. We're developers. We don't want to be marketers. We don't want to be salespeople. We don't want to be managers. We want to do the cool, fun part where we make it. But if you really want to succeed, you should at least pay a little lip service to this. I don't know. So my own personal example is this is a project I started at the beginning of the semester. I stopped about a third of the way in the semester because school, but I'm totally going to go back to it. So I wanted to make a mod for Skyrim. It was basically just going to change like how you level up in the late game. I won't go into the details. So I thought, can it be done? What do I need to learn? How do I learn it? And I found out that everything's done with the creation kit. It's actually really convenient to mod things in Skyrim because you might make content in some art tool or something, or program in a text editor, but everything gets imported into this one program, the creation kit, and it'll just like wad everything up into a ball, into one file, and you can just give it to people. So I have to learn how to use the creation kit. So I didn't start my project. I started doing tutorials on the creation kit. How do I learn it? All of the forum posts and stuff linked me back here to the wiki. This is creationkit.com. That's how I learn it. What's next? Not here is tech support, but that's tech support. There's a forum for it. I did not find this before I started, and I really should have. This is actually, you'd think because this is the official Bethesda Softworks forums that this would be really easy to notice and find. It wasn't. Actually, this was like the third forum I found. I really wish I had found this sooner because it was a huge hiccup in my development. I was like really on a roll and I got stuck on something, and then I waited for a day and a half trying to get responses from these different forums. So I really wish I had done that tech support part first. You don't just need to learn technologies. If there's a design involved, you have to learn details about the design. If there's art involved, you might have to learn about art. So this involves the leveling system in Skyrim. I have to know how levels work in Skyrim. So I found lots of information about exactly how levels work. And all these numbers, and oh, it's just, woo, numbers. I love it. Very critical. Very critical. If my whole concept is I'm going to change the leveling system in Skyrim, and I want it to be better than the existing system. I better know how the existing system works. I better at least be able to make the argument that I don't like the existing system, and how can I really do that if I don't know enough about it? So I had to learn that stuff. Do I still want to do this? I decided, yeah, I do. By the way, kind of as an aside, this is all about mitigating risk. You will never hit zero risk. There's always unknown unknowns. For example, Papyrus is a really awful scripting language. I took it for granted that it would be sort of competent, but you don't really have to be a programmer to understand this. There's this little thing here, and this works with like most stuff, but then with arrays, whatever that is, this doesn't work. So that's the non-programmer explanation. The reason the highlighted thing is there on the wiki page is because I edited the wiki and put that on there.
Oh.
That wasn't on there. It took me like an hour and a half to figure out why my script wouldn't compile, because anyone who knows anything about programming yeah, so he's in computer science. He looks at that and goes, why on earth would that ever be? So yeah, there's things that you will just not know about, but the idea here is to mitigate risk. You'll never completely eliminate it, and we want low-hanging fruit. So things will always spring up, and you just have to deal with that. This technique is not infallible.
Sucks so bad.
Okay, so.
How did you figure it out? Did it just point to it, or?
Yeah, it pointed to that line, and it said it was crashing, but I absolutely couldn't figure out what it was at all. And I was just playing with it and trying different things, and then it occurred to me about an hour and a half in, and I thought, no, I couldn't. No, I couldn't. No, I couldn't. And I changed it to myArray3 equals myArray3 plus 5, and it compiled.
Did it work?
What? Yeah, see, I can tell who's a computer scientist, because they're all going, what? Yeah, and then there's the few silent people. It's like, okay, I know who's a programmer. This is the programmer test, is show them this and say, the plus equals operator does exist in the language, but that line doesn't work, and then see who laughs, and then you'll know who the programmer is. Okay. So next is market research. Market research was really easy for this, because everything is on the creation kit. I already know what my distribution platform is, and I know where to find the competition. They're all on here. I went to top rated all time. I went to most popular this week. I went through like 20 pages of each. This is where everyone gets their mods for Skyrim. I went through 20 pages of most popular this week. I went 20 pages of most popular all time. I did all kinds of searches. I clicked in here, searched for experience, leveling, skills, everything I could think of. And I found out that there's virtually no competition whatsoever, which really surprised me. So I thought there might not be a market. But I've already shown most of the people here, but awkward zombie. I have to go back a ways. I'm not sure where it was. I saw a comic that kind of kicked my butt into gear that kind of inspired me to actually start the project. Why did my internet stop now? Do we not have internet down here?
No, it's okay.
Oh, there's a new comic. The only competitor I found was spend Dragon Souls for perks. That's sort of the idea where, kind of end game you can level up. But it wasn't really addressing the problem quite in the way I wanted to. It felt like it was, looking at it, it had a very different feel from what I envisioned. And it was a really, really popular mod. And this was the best possible outcome. Because if there's one competitor and they're really, really popular and they're not doing it the way you want to do it, that means one, there's a market, really, really popular. Two, you're not directly competing with that competitor. So I thought, awesome, there's totally going to be a market for this. So here's the comic. Our heroine has a concept for a roguish bardy thiefy kind of character. And as you use skills, you improve in them, but then when you hit 100, you can't get any better in that skill. And so if you want to keep getting, as you get skills, you get other stuff too, like perks and maximum health and things like that. And if you want to keep getting those, you have to sort of abandon your character concept and essentially by the end of the game, if you're trying to get the last few things, you are literally playing the opposite of the character you wanted to play. And this seemed really inappropriate for a role-playing, immersive type of game. That's where the whole concept came from. So I saw this, the concept for my mod. So I saw this comic, and that finally got me off my butt. And I thought, yes, at least one other person has this problem, is annoyed by it as I am. But what I was doing before is I was using console commands. I designed the system, and then I approximated it by using pencil and paper and looking at the clock and like logging times and skill amounts, and I was using the console to edit my stats, and that's actually less work than making the whole mod. But you know, it's not a lot of fun to tell other people, hey, I invented this system. You just need to use a lot of pencil and paper and console commands. You have to memorize them all. So I would actually need to make a mod for other people to have fun with this. It would also be more convenient if it were actually done. So how do I tell people? Communication. This is pretty much it. I can post on the Steam forums. I can also post on the Bethesda Softworks forums. And this is actually, the mod page itself, here's a mod page, is a really great way to communicate with your users. I have found that when I communicate with mod authors with something thoughtful, they usually respond back. So this is really manageable. If I decided I didn't like this, I could like post a link to some forum or something on the mod page itself, up here in the big description. So I didn't really flesh out a plan B if I decide that I don't really like this, but the idea is I do have a plan A, at least to begin with. So, you know, you have to give it some thought. So usually businesses want people to pay money, and then they don't care if you like it. They do want you to like it because then you'll never buy the sequel or you'll never buy their games again. But for right now, in the moment, they just want you to buy the game. But you want people to have fun because you're a developer. You're not a cold-hearted businessman. So you have to think about what your revenue is. People are playing your game versus not playing your game, and they're enjoying it. And again, you're not professional marketers. You don't have the resources or the interest in devoting all of your time to figuring out how you stack up with other mods or games, but you can try to feel it out. If you have a relevant forum for your type of product, like Skyrim mods that somehow have something to do with leveling up, you know, find the Skyrim mods forum and see how many posts there are about any mods like that from time to time. And you should probably have your own thread. See how active your thread is. Is your thread dying? Nobody's posting in it? That means it's probably time for a patch if you still care about the project at all. Or maybe you really screwed up a patch or two ago and nobody likes your product anymore. So, you know, try to feel it out. Oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong. So that's the meat of the talk was beginning projects, but after the project is done, there's still stuff you can do to make sure your project is successful, because remember, we want people to enjoy it. It's not just about finishing it, it's about people playing it. We're not done until people are playing it, and we like that because they're having fun. Listen to your players. Now you have subscribers. Think of it as like an MMO. As long as they're playing it, as long as they're talking about it, they're having fun with your product. So you want to keep them doing that. That means they're successful. You want to keep them doing that for as long as you care about developing the project. You know, as soon as you decide I'm done, I'm going to move on to another project, that's fine. But you want to keep your subscribers for a project that you're actively developing. So you have to kind of keep your ear to the ground and figure out what they're saying. And when you iterate, when you make patches, when you come up with new features, when you prioritize, am I going to fix this bug? Am I going to add this feature? Am I going to make my game load faster? Should I work on optimizing how fast levels load or something like that? Should I spend more time on the particle effects so that explosions look really satisfying? Try to figure out where your product is falling flat with people and what they really like. And there's two approaches you can do. You can either like really go pedal to the metal on the stuff that they really like. You can really try to max that out, or you can focus on the huge problem areas that might be keeping people from enjoying your product. You should probably, the middle stuff you can probably sort of ignore. You should either be fixing the hugest problems or maximizing the unique stuff that people really find fun about your product. Also, don't listen to your players, ever. You should really not listen to anything that they have to tell you. I should clarify. Your relationship with your players at this point, if you have a product that people are playing, is that you are the doctor and they're the patient. You do not want to listen to a patient who has gone on WebMD and figured out what their disease is, and they come to you and they say, write me a prescription for this disease because I have it. You have to get their symptoms, and you, the expert, you who have devoted yourself to being a game designer or a developer of any kind, you know, if someone tells you that the art is bad, they will also tell you the art should do this, and they will almost definitely be wrong, at least on one thing they tell you. And if you actually did it and they saw it, they would admit that they were wrong, or inside they would. People don't admit they're wrong on the internet. But you as the expert, you with the expertise in that field, you can say, that's not going to work. You have to try and dig back to where was the problem and then come up with a solution yourself. So if people are telling you you need to increase the damage on the rocket launcher, do not increase the damage on the rocket launcher. They're really telling you players perceive the rocket launcher has a certain role and it's not performing that role to an extent where it's actually useful and people want to use it. Then you have to figure out why is it not fulfilling that role, or why are player expectations wrong about what role it fills. And then you can say maybe the damage should go up, or maybe it should have bigger, stronger knockback, or a bigger explosion radius, or something like that. Faster rocket velocity, higher rate of fire. There's all kinds of ways. People will often give you the sledgehammer solution of increase or decrease the damage. You know, that's a really, really common suggestion that you'll get all the time on a combat-oriented project. Don't listen to your players. They're not game designers. They haven't put in the time and the passion that you do. They can tell you when it's not fun. They're really, really good at that. And they can sort of pinpoint in on, like, there's something wrong with the rocket launcher here. But don't take their diagnosis. Just take their symptoms, and you should make the diagnosis. And communicate with your players. Certain players really appreciate a sense of interactivity. Like when I get a response, when I try to make a thoughtful comment on a Skyrim mod and I get a response from the developer, it really lets me see, like, what is the developer's priority with this project? Where are they going with it? And that tells me, should I stay subscribed to it? Does this person seem like they're going to do interesting things with it? Or are they just did they just kind of throw it together by accident and it's not really going to go anywhere? Don't tell people about, like, what you're planning to do specifically, because your plans will change in development. It happens all the time. So you do want to improve it, and you'll say, you know, I'm focusing on this area. Don't say what you're going to do to make that area better. Don't say what you're doing with the rocket launcher. Say, yeah, I understand that the rocket launcher needs some work, and that'll be a focus of the next patch. But if you keep people informed about just kind of where your head is, if you can kind of convey your vision a little bit, that can keep people excited about your product. And don't ever say, I'm not increasing the damage on the rocket launcher, because no one is going to read it, and you'll just get it over and over and over and over and over again. They will never shut up about increasing the damage on the rocket launcher. Like I said, they give you these sledgehammer solutions. 90% or more of your players are going to give you, when they want to give a suggestion about a certain feature or a certain aspect, they will give the same suggestion every time. They will give the first most obvious one that someone with no experience with development, no experience in the field, no practice, they've never tried to do it themselves. Turns out that you usually come up with the same thing every time. If you get 100 random people, 90 people will tell you the same thing. You can't say no to all of them. Don't bother explaining why you're not going to increase the damage. I can tell you from experience, you'll just spend all day just typing why you're not going to increase the damage, and you'll never get any development done. So don't bother rejecting people, but you should make general posts not directed at anyone of where your head is and what you're focusing on. So I'll finish up with a really good metric that you've made it, that you have a good product, that you're successful. This is the one thing you absolutely should be driving towards. And when you do this, you know that you're on the right track. You want someone to be really upset. You want someone to be really mad. So I've never seen a project, I've never seen a game or a mod or anything that wasn't very good and hardly anyone played it at all, and it was kind of a failure, and then they released a patch for it, and then someone got really, really upset that they ruined it. I've never seen that. On the other hand, every single time Riot Games releases a patch preview for League of Legends, there's like hundreds of dislikes on the like-dislike bar. Like way, way more dislikes than on a typical YouTube video. And the reason that is these people are really passionate about it. They like it enough and care about it enough, they care about the series or the game or whatever enough to get angry when it changes. And that's a really good sign. You don't want everyone to get angry on one patch and then no one gets angry on the next patch, then you've really screwed up. But if you could get a few people angry on every single patch, you know you're doing something right because one, people are passionate about it, and two, you are making significant changes that are actually moving the product forward, or else they'd have nothing to be upset about. So that's my talk. Thank you very much.